Okay, this is the second part of the general prologue. We're going to pick up on page 37 on line 412, 413 with the Doctor of Medicine. So you should have your copy of your general prologue as well as your chart, because you're going to fill in the first two columns of your pilgrim chart. So here we go. With us there was a doctor of medicine, or in other words, a physician. In all this world, there was none other like him when it comes to medicine and surgery. For he was grounded in astronomy, and he tended his patients at the proper astrological hours through his knowledge of natural magic. He could tell when the right planet was in the ascent for the use of images to help his patient. He knew the cause of every malady, be it hot or cold or moist or dry, and where it is engendered, and from what humor. He was a really perfect practitioner. So this doctor doesn't go by normal books of medicine. He treats by the four humors and by astronomy. Not probably the doctor that I would want working on me, especially one doing surgery on me. The chart at the top of the presentation explains the four humors. Basically, what they believed is your body had four humors. Not like humors like laughing, that kind of humor, but for liquids. And when you were healthy, your body had just the proper amount of humors. When you were sick, it was because one of the four humors was there was either too much of it or too little of it. So if you look, the four humors are blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. Okay? Having learned the cause and root of the evil, he gave the sick man a remedy at once. He had his apothecaries quite ready to send him drugs and medicine, for each of them helped the other to profit. Their friendship was not recently begun. So the apothecaries are druggists or pharmacists. So they kind of make money off of each other. Well did he know ancient Asclepius, who was the god of medicine, Dioscorides and Rufus too, ancient Hippocrates, Halley and Galen, Serapion, Rhasis, Avician, Averroes, Damasus, Constantine, Bernard, Gaston, and Gilbert. He was temperate in his diet, for it did not include anything superfluous, but was very nourishing and digestible. His study was but rarely of the Bible. He was dressed entirely in bright red and blue, lined with taffeta and finest silk. And yet he was far from free in his spending. He kept the money he gained in time of pestilence. Since gold in medicine is a stimulant, therefore he loved gold especially. So he's well acquainted with the ancient and the modern medical authorities, but he states that he neglects the Bible, meaning that the care of, or what he believes is the care of the body, comes at the expense of the soul. He loves gold. His purpose in life is to make money. So he would rather make money than really help other people. He works with his druggists and he makes the most money during the plague. We talked a little bit about the four humors, and then we need to also make sure you fill in your chart about his appearance. He wears bright red and blue, and it's lined with taffeta and finest silk, both being kind of lightweight fabrics. Okay, next we have the wife of Bath, or Dame Alice. A good wife was there from near Bath. She was somewhat deaf, which was a shame. She had such a talent for making cloth that she surpassed the weavers of Yars and Ghent. In all the parish there was no wife entitled to make her offering before her, and if one did, certainly she was so angry that she was out of all charity. Her kerchiefs were of very fine fabric. I dare say that the ones that were on her head of a Sunday must have weighed 10 pounds. Her hose were of fine scarlet red, laced tightly, and her shoes very new and supple. Her face was bold and handsome and ruddy. She had been a worthy woman all her life. She had 5 husbands at the church door, aside from other company in youth, but of that there is no need to speak now. And 3 times had she been at Jerusalem. She had crossed many a strange river. She had been at Rome, at Boulogne, in Gallia, and at the shrine of St. James, and at Cologne. She knew much about wandering by the way. She was gap-toothed, to tell the truth. On an ambling horse she sat easily, well wimpled, and on her head was a hat as broad as a buckler or a shield. A footmantle was loose about her hips, and on her feet a pair of sharp spurs. In company she could laugh and gossip well. She knew of the remedies of love as it happened, for she knew that art's old dance. So physically, she wears clothes that she weaves herself, which she likes to show off. She has a large hat, she has the wimple, which we talked was under the neck, spurs, a riding skirt, and then she wears these scarlet red stockings that Chaucer says are very tightly pulled. She wears a lot of her clothes all at once to kind of show off her skills, her weaving skills. Physically, she is gap-toothed, which, if you look it up, is a sign of lust. She's deaf in one ear. She has a reddish face. You'll get more if you choose to read The Wife of Bath's tale. In her prologue to her tale, you'll get more information about her physical appearance. She has 5 husbands, so she feels that men should obey her. She owns them. I know everything there is to know about men because I've had 5 husbands. So she also believes she's the expert on love. She is headstrong, bold, and confident. Now, Chaucer, we have to think about what he's trying to do with The Wife of Bath, or what he's trying to kind of put off. Is he a pro-feminist, or is he misogynist? His attitude about fearless and outspoken women could be admirable, or he could be satirical. He describes her, Dame Alice, with many of kind of the women-hating traits that writers of the time were used to portraying women as, being vain or being dominant or being lustful. But he does portray the Wife of Bath in such a realistic way, with such human detail. It's hard to see her as a satire or an awful woman. So that's up to you. There was a good man of religion who was a poor parson of a town, but he was rich in holy thoughts and works. He was also a learned man, a clerk, who would truly preach Christ's gospel. He would teach his parishioners devoutly. He was benign and wonderfully diligent, and the most patient in adversity. He had been proved to be such many times. He was loath to condemn a man for not paying his tithes, but would, without a doubt, rather give his poor parishioners thereabouts part of his own offerings and property. He was satisfied with very little. His parish was wide, and its houses far apart. But he never neglected for rain or thunder, sickness or trouble, to visit on foot, with a staff in his hand, the furthest in his parish, great or humble. He gave this noble example to his sheep, that he practiced first and preached afterwards. He took this motto from the gospel and further added this saying, "What if gold rusts? What shall iron do?" For if a priest in whom we trust be corrupt, it is no wonder if an ignorant man go to rust. It is indeed shameful, the priest will but know, to find a filthy shepherd and a clean sheep. Surely a priest ought to give an example by his own spotlessness of how his sheep should live. He did not hire out his benefice and leave his sheep encumbered in the mire, while he ran off to London, to St. Paul's, to find himself a chantry of souls, or be shut up with a religious order, but stayed at home and kept his fold well, so that the wolf could not harm it. He was a shepherd and not a mercenary. And although he was holy and virtuous, he was not scornful to sinful men, or haughty and proud in his speech, but discreet and benign in his teaching. To draw folk to heaven by fair behavior and good example, that was his business. But if any person were obstinate, whoever he was, of high or low degree, he would scold him sharply on that occasion. I believe there is no better priest anywhere. He did not look for pomp and reverence, nor affect an overly scrupulous conscience. He taught the lore of Christ and his 12 apostles, but first he followed it himself. The parson is a true Christian priest. He is gentle, he lives the perfect life, and he teaches that life as well, and he expects his people, the people around him, to live that life. Appearance, Chaucer doesn't really give us a lot of information about how he looks, as he's focused solely on his purity of soul. We can probably assume that he is poor but rich in holy thoughts. And his appearance is obviously not distracting either, because Chaucer doesn't write about it. He talks about how he is a shepherd to his flock being his parishioners. There's the analogy of the shepherd and the sheep. He believes that as a leader, he should set an example for his parishioners. There's that great imagery of you never find a clean sheep and with a dirty shepherd. Amid like the other worldly clerics and the false and superficial religious other clergy people, the poor parson stands out as the ideal portrait of what we want a parish priest to be. He hates to excommunicate. He would rather pay the tithes or the responsibility of his parishioners by giving them his own money out of his own pocket, but he will call a sinner out on their missteps. He will call a spade, and he doesn't care who you are. And he can be stubborn and firm in these kinds of situations. With him there was a plowman, his brother, who had pulled many a cartload of dung. He was a good and faithful laborer, living in peace and perfect charity. He loved God best with all his heart, at all times, whether he was pleased or grieved, and next he loved his neighbor as himself. He would thresh and also dig and delve for Christ's sake, for every poor man without pay, if it were in his power. He paid his tithes fairly and well, both on his own earnings and on his property. Wearing a tunic, he rode upon a mare. Physically, or his appearance, he wears a tunic, not a lot of description. He rides a horse, but he is the brother of the plowman. So we can assume that they have the same kind of moral standing or the moral beliefs. He is part of the laity. He is poor, classified as a peasant. He is a loyal Christian. He pays his taxes to the church. He's honest with his neighbors. He pays his tithes or his responsibilities. His job or his title is that he is a small farmer, but he is the ideal Christian man, which Chaucer obviously displays as more important than being a farmer. He is hardworking and he is faithful. Chaucer doesn't really describe him very personally. It's kind of from afar. It seems to consider the plowman a good person, even though he doesn't really have a lot of knowledge of him, which can make us assume that he didn't have a ton of interaction with him. There was also a reeve and a miller, a summoner, and a pardoner too, a manciple, and myself. There were no more. So there's only a few more people that he's going to actually describe. I'm going to stop here. Make sure you have all the notes through the plowman. Fill in those first 2 columns of your chart. And start to think about, as you go through these, who may be pure or corrupt, and then your reasons why.